Okay, this session here got about an hour and 10 minutes or so to talk about the development of Reece Hoffa, who's sitting right here in the front row. So we're going to, if you have any specific questions, you can go right to Reece, and I'm going to ask Reece to make a few comments here and there. And also talk about how we went about setting up his training scheme for the 2007 season. And I've been coaching the University of Georgia now. This is my 11th season at the University of Georgia. Actually, you know what? It might be my 12th season. I'm sorry. Time flies. And Reece is actually the first athlete I recruited at the University of Georgia. So we've been working together. This is our 11th season working together. So part of the reason, or hopefully part of what you get out of this presentation, is how Reece kind of came along and developed, and how we made decisions on what to do. And so it's kind of a case study on the development of an athlete. And I can't say what we did the first couple years was the basis for everything that happened after that. We kind of just went along and took it as it came. We're always reevaluating and making changes in the program. We weren't making drastic changes. We were just kind of, making adjustments as each year went on. Everything got a little bit better, maybe got a little bit faster, stronger, and we just kind of built off of that. So this is about how we went about setting up a career, basically. To start off, I wanted to just show you here, this is a development table for Reece's marks over the years. So 1998 was his first year throwing the 16-pound shot. He threw 1907. And what you notice right here is every single year he got a little bit better. There's improvement every single year. So that's actually fairly rare to improve about 10 years in a row. Usually there's 1-2 years where he's stagnant. He got a little bit better each year. Now, a couple of these marks, for example, this 2174, this is an indoor mark, and the 2211 is an indoor mark as well. And then the 2243 is an outdoor mark. So in 2005 outdoors, I think he only threw 2129 outdoors, but he threw 2174 indoors. So he may not have improved every single year indoors, every single year outdoors, but overall there was some type of improvement. And you can see the improvement was pretty steady, moving forward pretty well. Usually the big jumps, like the bigger jumps here, like from the 2095 or the 2167, were really something where the timing, that wasn't a huge jump in strength so much. It's just a nice improvement in the timing and the understanding of the technique, and good meet situation, good confidence, all kind of came together at once and produced a very good result. Reece's general overall marks improved as well. His average mark each year got a whole lot better as well. Now, one thing I want to show you, this is another performance progression chart right here, and this goes from the year 2001 up to this past year. And you'll notice there's two characteristics right here in this chart. And one is there's a general increase here towards getting better. And you'll notice each year it has a little bit different color here. So when you look at 2007, these are his marks right in here. You see where the average of the marks were. It's right in the middle here. You slide over and you see that's about 2150. It was very rare that he went under 21. If you look at the last couple years, this line right here is 21 meters. Most of what's happened since 2005 have been meets over 21 meters. There's not that many people that throw 21 meters at all. Reece is making very much a habit of it. But the other characteristic you see in this chart is you see more wild fluctuations up and down right here. And then they start to come together and there's not so much variation. The consistency level gets a lot more, okay? And a lot of the decisions and things that we've done and made in our training have been to foster and have caused this consistency right here. And I can tell you, I think I know back, and maybe Reece, you can correct me. I remember in like 2001 or 2002, I told Reece, I said, if you can throw 20-50 all the time, no more, no less. If you can just throw 20-50 every given day, I said, you'll be able to make a living throwing shot. It's like, oh, that's cool. That'd be neat to be a pro shot putter. And then the next year, in 2002, Reece threw 20-47, and then in 2003, he threw 20-50 quite a bit. And that was kind of Reece's real breakout year, was 2003. And then I told Reece the next year, I was like, well, if you throw 20-80 all the time, you'll be able to be top 10 in the world, and you maybe got a shot at possibly getting a medal there. And so in 2003, when he did that, he finished number 9 in the world that year. Didn't get a medal yet, although he won the gold medal at the Pan Am Games and set the meet record, which is quite nice at 20.95. And then I told him the next year, I said, you know, if you can throw around 21 meters, you're definitely in medical attention. You'll get some type of medal right there, and you'll probably be top 5 in the world. So sure enough, you know, the next year, that's, you know, 2004, where the blue is here, you can see he's over 21 meters a few times, and his average meet's probably just under 21 meters, and he got a silver medal indoors. And I think he finished number 5, yeah, number 5 in the world that year. And then I said, you know what, if you throw 21-20 all the time, you'll be top 3 in the world for sure, and you got a chance at winning a gold medal. That was 2005. Yeah, 2005 right here. You know, he had a few down meets right here. There's actually only 3 of them. Everything else is pretty much around 21 or higher. These 3 particular meets, actually, almost every single one of them was either bad rain or snow or some type of bad weather right there. It really wasn't a poor performance because he didn't throw well. There's some type of adverse conditions. But Reece ended up finishing number 2 in the world that year by, I think he's number 2 or 3 in the world by IAAF and number 2 in the world by Track and Field News. So, you know, each year he just got a little bit higher, and then after that year I said, you know what, if you're throwing 21-30 on average, you're probably going to be number 1 in the world. And sure enough, that's basically what he did. And he's been number 1 in the world the last couple of years. So basically, what we did is, over the years, we figured out what was important and what was not important, and what he needed to do to be good and what he didn't need to do to be good. And I know sometimes when we're building a training program and trying to figure out what to do, we're trying to do a little bit of everything. So we want to make sure we're doing the best. We're including a little bit of everything in so we don't miss something. And sometimes you end up having a huge, long training plan that's all over the place and overly complicated. And what you really need to try to figure out is what's the bare minimum you need to do to be successful. That's the number 1 thing. And I think we've done a pretty good job of doing that over the years. Now, I was giving the same talk, you know, early in Las Vegas, and somebody raised their hand and said, and we were talking about confidence and performance in the big meet, and the guy raised his hand and goes, how long did it take Reece to get to that level? I'm like, well, 8 years. You know, it didn't happen overnight. I'm telling you guys this right now. It's not. I don't think there's anything I can tell you that's the magic answer that's going to get you those type of results in 1 or 2 years. Experience is the key. It was an 8-year journey, you know, from like 1998 up to, you know, 2005, 2006 to get to that level, but he was slowly moving in that level. Now, here's Reece Hoffa's physical and lifting parameters over the years that we've documented from 1998 to present. And I kind of want to take some time and go over all of these. There's a lot of numbers here, and we'll kind of go over each one. Obviously, one thing I'll show you here is his body weight. Steadily gotten heavier right here, as you see. And which is okay. Force equals mass times acceleration, so the mass is going up. The acceleration is staying about the same, so the force is going up, distance is going up, that's good. So I tell you what, as far as the body weight, I know some people may say, oh gosh, you're getting heavier and heavier, you know, you got to stay fit, you know, you got to watch your weight. The shot keeps on going further. That's the main thing. Who cares about the body weight? As long as he's moving well in the ring and can handle the extra body weight, I think the extra body weight's a good thing. You look at a guy, I think the extra body weight, as long as you can manage it and move well, if you miss a position a little bit and you're a little bit bigger person, you can still really get into the shot and make it go. I look at Randy Barnes, you know, the world record holder, and if you, I think if somebody were to just say, you know what, what's the most famous throw he's ever done in his history, you'd probably pick his gold medal winning throw in 1996, which technically I thought was really pretty bad. But the thing is when he got way over in the bucket and out of position, he was probably weighing about, you know, 310, 315 pounds at the time. He was still able to get into it and put something into it. I think a smaller thrower in the same position wouldn't have been able to do as much. And I have to say, I kind of noticed when Reece, probably about 2003, 2004, when Reece was about 133K, 135K, when he was missing positions in practice, the ball was still going. And that's kind of a nice thing to know, that when you miss it, it's still going to go. That actually breeds some confidence, that you know your bottom end is much better than everybody else's bottom end. And really on the international circuit and the big meets, I don't even know if it's so much about your top end, because people aren't PRing right left at the big meets. It's who doesn't mess up, whose bottom end is the highest, not whose top end is the highest. As weird as that may sound. Now, starting out right here in, again, we're talking about just Reece's training right here. I kind of want to tell the whole story. The first year, you know, he was coming out of high school. So in the high school in the United States, we throw the 5.4 kilogram shot, the 12-pound shot. So we basically we came in and started throwing the 14 in the fall to kind of bridge the gap. From 12, we went with the 14 in the fall, and then we were going to go to the 16 for later on in the year. So we didn't throw the 7K, the 6.5, the 6K. We didn't throw anything heavy. We just threw the 14 and maybe the 16 a little bit. So, and I remember this one throw right here, this 1964, Reece did that in the fall, and that kind of showed me really what was in store for the future that year, because Reece was throwing and training at that time. If I remember correctly, Reece, you can jump in and correct me. You know, I don't know how good you are. I'm getting older now. My memory's going. So Reece was throwing around 60, 61 feet at best. He was throwing 1830, 1850 in training, between 18 and 1850 in training. And then at one practice, probably in October, November, he just turned on the gas on one throw and just threw 1964. And I was like, you know what? That's almost 65 feet. That probably means he could throw, if you really lined up the 16, he could throw 60 feet right now. And I was hoping Reece would throw during the indoor season, throw 60 feet. And so that one throw showed me, even though he wasn't throwing nearly that throw all the time, that showed me what he had in him, that there was a lot more there. And he ended up throwing 1907 that year, which is pretty good. And the stand throw at the time, we were getting after the stand throw pretty good. We were hitting it pretty hard and reversing after it. And at the NCAA Indoor Championships that year, he threw 1645. So if you look at the conversion there, you're basically looking at about 2.5 meters, a little over 2.5 meters for the conversion, which isn't that big at the time from the stand throw to the full throw. Bench press, got up pretty good. Back squat, again, got up pretty good. His power clean was okay. His snatch was okay. Push press was okay. Overheads pretty much sucked. Reece is never all that good at them, but it's all relative. 40 was under 5 seconds, 40-yard sprint, and vertical leap was right at about 24 inches or 2 feet, 60 centimeters. The next year, we pretty much just threw the 16, and he threw 1936, but he had a lot of meets over 19 meters. He was a little bit more steady that year. You can see his stand throw went well up, and the lifting, the squat stayed the same. Bench press went up some, the power clean went up, the snatch went up. Push press, he doubled 150 instead of singling 150. Got a little bit faster. His overhead got a lot better because he got some exposure to it. So he got up over 17 meters, and he added a whopping 2 centimeters to his standing long jump. So there again, that might beg the question for Reece, how much does the standing long jump really matter? And the vertical leap got a little bit better. You can see the next couple of years, we started adding in, going back and throwing the 14 and the 6K. And Reece that year, actually, in 2000, through 1979, and in the Grand Prix meet, he threw 1975 and beat Kevin Toth, who had just come over from 3 straight meets over 21 meters. So Reece started actually picking off some pretty good guys that year. And so this is the start of the ascent. And you can see his stand throw went up a little bit more. Bench continued to go up. He had a bit of a bad back that year, so we didn't really do any squatting. And the cleans, and he got his clean and the snatch up. The snatch is up to 130. That went up nicely. And he got down to a 4.7840. And his overhead stayed, a little bit under 17. Now, we didn't throw the overhead a whole lot there, too. But the jumping slowly went up. And you can see his IAAF ranking the next year went up a little bit more. Now, one thing you'll see is the light shots. He started with that 6K. He really started breaking through, right about, actually, I'm sorry, 2002 he broke through with the light shot. His light shots are getting a little bit better. And again, we're staying with the 14 and the 6K. And his best stand throw that year was 17:35. This is all-time best stand throw. Now, he did that actually in the meet indoors at Nebraska, like a second or third indoor meet of the year. He stood through 57 feet, 17:35, and he warmed up at 20:50. And he ended up throwing 20:22 later on that year at the end of May. And he didn't break 20:50 again till 2003. That warm-up there at Nebraska just showed me he was just fired up that day. And that was his first time getting to throw against Carl Myerscough, actually. And he finished second to Carl in that meet. That meet, again, just showed me, you know what, whatever he's doing right now, there's a lot more there. And so we always had, sometime during the year, there's always something that showed me he had a lot more in him. And because of that, we didn't really need to hit the lifting very much harder or hit the training very much harder. We just had to make those big warm-up throws. We had to give him the confidence where he could reproduce those type of big warm-up throws in the meet. And again, in 2003, when we went to Mount Sac, he ended up throwing 20:95 at the end of the summer. At Mount Sac that year, which is in April, he had a little sector foul. This is, I think, the first year they went to the international sector, the 34.95 degree sector. He had a sector foul at 21:30. And he held it in footwork-wise. He just pulled out of the sector by about 6 inches. There again, that showed me, you know what, he's got a lot more in me. So we kept on getting these indicators every couple years that, you know what, he's strong enough to throw a lot further than he's throwing. It's about getting the balance and the timing down. So now you'll notice right about here in 2002, actually 2001, the squat is about as heavy as it ever was. The clean, this is as heavy as it ever was. Snatch, heavy as it ever was. You know, push press right here, never went much more than 180. We did a double at 180 right here in 2003. After about 2002, the max strength is pretty much developed. We figured, you know, at this point, right around there, he's as strong as he needs to be to throw over 70 feet. We just need to make 70 feet consistent all the time, because 70 feet, which is 21:34, if you go back and look, that'll usually win the world championship. At worst, it'll be second place. Okay? So that was kind of our feeling was, we got all this stuff nailed down now. Let's just focus on the throwing, get these throwing numbers up. So that was the basis of the training plan. We'll talk about specifically what he does in training a little bit later on. I just kind of wanted to give you his throwing history and how he made the decisions that we made here. Now, you'll notice what's interesting here too is you know, we were throwing the 6K up through 2002. Then in 2003, we threw the 14 and the 6.5K. And then we went 6.5K in training, you know, and also the 7.26 in 2004 and 2005. This 6K result right there, we threw that one time with Adam Nelson. And like Adam threw about 24:04, I think, and Reece threw 23:53 that one day, just messing around. And Reece stayed with that 6.5 until 2006, and then we switched over and started throwing the 7K, which is the 15.5. Why did we throw the 6.5? Well, we wanted to go throw a 15, so we ordered a 15. They sent it to us. We threw it 2 or 3 times, went well. Then I weighed it, and it turned out to be 14.5. We're like, no, this is going okay. Let's just go with it. So that's how we chose 6.5. And then when we got to 2006, we decided to go to something a little bit closer in training to a 6K. Now, why do we throw? The 2 reasons, as I mentioned before, that we throw light is number one, throwing heavies just messes with our timing way too much. Throwing lighter seems to help improve the timing, if anything. Also, it saves the wear and tear in the body. When you're making hard throws and throwing far, there is a big difference between a 14.5 or a 15 and a 16. So we're able to get more throws in training. It doesn't beat you up as much. And we also, like I said, it'll save the wear and tear, maybe minimize finger and injuries and wrist soreness and shoulder soreness and elbow soreness and stuff like that that can kick in from overuse. Now, we'll say this, when we're throwing light, we'll throw that earlier on in the season, and maybe we throw it during the season, but when we have competitions coming up, then we're throwing the 16. We always usually at least have 1 or 2 practices before a big competition with the 16. We don't throw the 15.5 and then go off to a meet and do the 16. And we'll talk a little bit more about that specifically later on. You'll notice here a couple things. Again, weight going up, vertical leap going up. Now, 75 centimeters is very nice. It goes to 71 in 2007. We took that reading of 71 centimeters early on in the year. I think when Reece is really in shape in the middle of the season, if we did a vertical test, he probably would have been 75, maybe even 77 centimeters. We just tested him about a month ago. Reece is at 71 centimeters. So I can tell you right now, Reece's training parameters, he's basically doing exactly what he did at this time last year. Although, like you said, he may be about 10 pounds stronger in the weight room than this time last year. So, if anything, we might be a little bit ahead of where we were last year. Whether it's going to stay that way or not, we're not sure. If he does, then hey, that's great. If we stay the same as last year, he should still be extremely successful, I think. Any questions about the lifting here? Okay, obviously, and part of the reason that I kept all these numbers is just so, obviously, young throwers, you're always wondering, man, these guys that throw over 22 meters, these guys are larger than life. How do they get to be where they were? I want to kind of paint a picture and show you it was a gradual process. These are the leaps and bounds you made. All right, let me get you first, then Jeff, I'll get you next.
Is there a reason why the Olympic lifting stopped?
Yeah, the Olympic. You know what? Thanks for mentioning that. The Olympic lifting, what happened was, there again, let me take you back to this back squat here. Reece every now and then would have some lower back problems. He'd get sore and tired. And when I looked, he had a problem right here where he couldn't squat. We laid off the squat so he could kind of finish out the season. And when we got up in here into 2005, that lower back started bothering him again. And so we had put the Olympic lifting in the program, but he ended up not doing it because his back was sore. And he told me afterwards, he said, Coach, I haven't been doing the Olympic lifting. I'm like, well, you're still throwing further than ever, so okay. And then we consciously made the choice the last 2 years. We were like, you know what? We didn't Olympic lift. We still improved quite nicely. I don't think at this point we need it. We basically, you'll notice when you look at our training plan, it's been pared down and pared down and pared down. So, and I've mentioned to people, yeah, Reece does an Olympic lift now. What? That's sacrilege. You can't do that. You know what? These kind of heavy rhythmic step-ups is basically the exercise that we basically replaced it with. So he's basically, just stepping, exploding up, and getting that hip extension on the box with a much lighter weight. The pull doesn't come into play. He's able to do that without bending forward so much with the Olympic lift. So that's kind of the answer right there. So we did replace it with a few lifts like that. But like I said, he does have an Olympic lifting background. He did have the snatch at 130 kilograms, so it's not like we never did it before. But that was the reason for taking it out, is it's just something that it did more harm than good at that point in the career, so we took it out and we're able to work with it. Jeff, you had a question.
I'd like to go back to his performances. How many times did he perform in a year? In terms of competition, you say the obviously graph was up and it's steady.
Yeah.
We counted roughly about 12 competitions in that competition period. Give us a rough idea of how many competitions he did in a competitive season. Split it between outdoor and indoor.
Yeah, indoor is pretty simple. And I'll talk as far as being an open athlete, because obviously in college you kind of have a very set schedule. It's kind of the same year after year. As an open athlete, so that would be from 2002 on. The indoor season usually encompasses one kind of opening practice meet where we usually go to Clemson, a nearby facility, and just kind of do a systems check. And then usually 2, possibly 3 regular season competitions, like the Boston games, Milrose games, and then maybe one other one if it's being contested. And then the USA Championships. So that would make 4. And then that year, if there's a world championship and he's on the team, that would be 5. So anywhere from probably 3 to 5 during the indoor season. Then outdoors, again, this year there's a few less competitions than previous years. If I remember correctly, outdoors there used to be probably 16 to 18 outdoor competitions, but now this year, and Reece is in the position where he can pick and choose. You know, he's the level where he doesn't have to go spend a ton of time over here and just throw for the money to pay the bills and do, you know, 6 meets in 14 days in 7 different countries. That ends up just, you know, killing you. You know, he can kind of pick and choose, so he ends up doing more like 12 meets. And I'll actually, I'm going to go over at the end of this presentation, we'll go over all the meets he chose this year and kind of tell you why we did the meets we did. It's sort of a unique American situation why we did what we did, because most of the money's made over here, not in the U.S., so our schedule's kind of based on travel.
And then the third question, if I may, that is basically what I call generic, and you know, basically all the guys that I'm helping is similar, very similar to the program that you've got there.
Yeah.
What sort of lifts and other lifts, probably what you do in terms of your fitness and everything else we'll probably come on to later, hopefully.
Yes.
What sort of off-the-shelf events, or in terms of strength, do you actually interject with your normal lifts? Is there anything like the kettlebell and all that core development in terms of strength movements? Are there any additional exercises that you would put in there that is not actually written down?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously these are all included, but I'll show you the actual training programs later on, and that'll do the best job of listing them up there, because we have quite a bit of supplementary exercises mixed in there. With weights, yes. Yeah, with weights. So I'll, with weights or possibly machines and plates and things like that. So that's going to be the last third of the presentation, so I'll list them for you.
So just to answer your question also about the meets, from let's say 2002 to about 2005, I probably did about 24 to 25 meets a year. Okay. And the reason I did so many of those meets is I hadn't reached a level where I could make any kind of money. So
okay, so it was money driven.
It was money driven.
Very much so, yeah.
Spend, you know, like 2 months doing almost 2 meets a week sometimes, whereas from 2006, 2007, I mean, 2006 I probably did maybe 18 meets, probably did about 17 in 2007.
Yeah.
And it was just driven based on money and performance.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, we were training with Adam Nelson, who was in the training group at the same time, and he did half as many meets, you know, and he was doing 15 meets, but he was Olympic, 2-time Olympic medalist and all that. He was able to, you know, make a lot more money, and he had more money saved up and all that type of stuff in the past. So I remember he said, "Man, Reece, you know, you compete probably too much." It's like, I got to survive too and pay the bills, so we all can't be you know. So, but now Reece is in that position, and I used to look at like Jan Železny, you know, when he was really throwing well, he'd do 6 meets in the summer, and that was it. But he was getting a huge appearance fee. Of course, he can afford to do that. So, is there another question?
This looks like very flexible type of programming. It's done for individual.
Yes.
I'm sure you go other athletes as well, apart from race.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So is it all designed according to? It seems like you're working according to what his body is taking.
Yeah.
And you were very flexible according to what is happening to him.
Yeah,
I
I had mentioned that in the previous talk. You guys were throwing the shot inside there. I'd said, you know, the key is writing the program for the individual athlete. You know, now I'd say with a rotational shot putter, probably every thrower that I have, 60-70% of what they do is going to be the same. I mean, everybody's going to squat or, you know, do an Olympic lift or obviously throw, but then there's individual variations based on the strength and weaknesses. The point of all this was there was constant improvement and constant, you know, bettering success, because we're really evaluating the training to give us clues to see which way to go next. And a lot of it had to do with just paring stuff down and recovering even more. So, and again, I'll talk about the details a little bit later on. This is just let me show you this chart right here. This is just kind of a throwing chart. This is from the 2004 season, and obviously the green line here is the 14.5-pound shot, and the red line is the 16-pound shot in training, and then the competition results are in blue right there. So basically what you see is obviously the green line here stays pretty well above, for the most part. It stays above what the red line is. There's a part here in the middle of the season where it kind of stayed the same, and that was kind of the conversion from indoors to outdoors. It's right at the beginning of right after the move from indoors to outdoors right there. But what you see generally is at the beginning of the year is the competition mark for Reece. He throws a little bit further in the meets than he does in practice with the 16, which is to be expected with the adrenaline and the meat psych and all that. And then when we got into the later portion of the season, it kind of evened out. And you can see it's kind of up and down, but overall I would say it kind of averaged out and we threw the same there. The 6.5 was always a good, meter to 75 centimeters better than what the 16-pound was right here. And the one thing you'll notice in this 2004 season, you notice there's a big spike here with the 6.5, and that spike was immediately before his big breakthrough when he threw 21.67. So his PR went from actually 21.07 at the time up to 21.67, and that's this mark right here. Okay, so you can see how it correlates. And we chart these throws. I just kind of look at tendencies from year to year, but this is just gives you a basic idea of what's happening there. Now you can see this is somewhat steady, and then there's a whole lot of variation here up and down. This usually had to do a lot with European travel. It would be one good meet and then one kind of down meet, one good meet, one kind of down meet, having to learn to deal with the travel. And sometimes there's a couple meets. It would be a meet 2 or 3 days later. So the first meet would be really good, then the second meet be kind of tired and drop down a bit. And then the next meet after that, I'll recover a little bit and come back up. And that's just the perils of traveling from far, far away. Now, this is a photo sequence. This is kind of going over Reece's technique, and this is I have to say, this is a good throw by Reece. This was his opening meet last year. He threw 21.84, which is a nice opener. He did this in March, at the end of March at the Alabama Relays. And Reece actually did this with a technique, and his timing wasn't quite the way he wanted. He got a good result, but we weren't quite happy with exactly how everything was. But it was a photo sequence I had and wanted to show you the basics of what we're trying to work on here. I got to tell you a little story behind this result. After the indoor season, Reece had done 6 meets. He'd done a lot of meets. He'd done 3 European meets. He basically went over to Europe, came back to the U.S. for 2 meets, went over to Europe and did 3 meets, came back and did the USA Championships. And won all his meets over in Europe, which is the idea, and I don't think he won one of the meets over in the U.S., but were the most important meets, meaning World Championships, Olympics and stuff, nowhere near the U.S., so he wanted to beat his major competitors on the road. So he did well in that sense. So we were in March, going back and starting to train again, get ready for the outdoor season. Reece goes, hey, he goes, Coach, we went to the Alabama Relays my first 3 years of college, and I won all 3 years. I just feel like I'm missing something. I need to add that 4th meet in that I never had my senior year, the 4th win. So he said, you think it'd be okay if I went and threw with the Alabama Relays? I'm like, Reece, you can do whatever you want. It's free country. You can do whatever you want. And I said, I'll tell you what, if you go over to the Alabama Relays, and our university was going over there anyway, I said, look, if you go over there and you break the stadium record, which happens, the stadium record is 21.47 by Brent Noon. So Brent Noon threw his personal best. Brent Noon was kind of Reece's kind of idol / mentor when he was younger. And it was the University of Georgia school record. Reece is the 2nd best on the University of Georgia list. I said, if you break the stadium record, I'll buy you all the ribs you can eat at Dreamland, which is a really good and famous ribs place. And so Reece is like, okay. And I understood that if he did break it, I was out like $70 or $80. The ribs are expensive, but they're good. So Reece is sitting at, remember, stadium record's 21.47. Reece is sitting at 21.23 after 5 rounds. And on his last throw, he pulls out 21.84 because he knew the ribs were on the line. So I'm pretty sure that was the impetus for this big throw here. But anyway, here's the start of the throw. And one thing that Reece is doing is he's trying to stay on the balls of his feet. And if you look here, you can kind of see his heels are off the ground. He's trying to stay on the balls of his feet during the windup. One of the things that Reece does is he kind of has big wide feet, It's easier for him to kind of set his heels down. And I noticed when he was winding up to this position here, that he'd actually kind of fall back a little bit as he'd unwind. And the major thing he's focusing on right now is, winding up this way and then unwinding and coming back and getting his weight over the left foot. And when you're working your weight right to left, if you tend to fall back an inch or two, you're not going to feel it because you're really focusing on moving right to left. If you're just standing there and you fall back, you'll feel it. But when you're moving right to left and falling back, you're usually not going to feel it until you're up on single support, and then it's too late to do anything about it. And so Reece he would cut the corner sometimes out of the back and kind of turn the corner, drop the shoulder, and fall in and over-rotate. And we would work on that left foot and the left side and again over and over and over to try to fix it. It wasn't quite working. So I was trying to figure out what it was and trying different cues and everything. And then when I was looking at the video one time, I just kind of noticed, and I was looking at it in slow motion a bunch of different times, I noticed when he finished winding up, he'd fall back on the right heel. As he'd unwind, he'd fall back on the left heel and kind of do a heel to a toe turn pretty severely. And I said, you know what? That's where the problem starts. It starts right here at the end of the wind-up. He actually falls back and then turns and shifts his weight over the left. So he's really focusing on staying, see how he's up on the ball of the foot? He's way up on the ball of the left foot, which is fine, but even his right foot, and you see a lot of throwers. I think I want to say like John Godina comes to mind, where he keeps this foot perfectly flat, which is perfectly fine to start that way. But Reece will lift the heel up a little bit to make sure that he's not going to fall back. He also is playing around at this point with his left arm. He's held it in different positions, but he's trying to keep it kind of straight out to make sure he's keeping his shoulders level. And those are the main cues right there. Then as he starts to unwind and shift his weight over the left, he's still working on maintaining the shoulders level. And you can see right here, he's nice and balanced as he comes out of the back. One thing he's going to try to do too, we work on this a lot in the preseason, but then when we get to the in-season, we don't worry about it as much. We have what we have, technically. This left leg, we try to keep this left knee bent a little bit more. It's somewhat straight right here. The more we keep that knee bent, the more he's going to be up on the ball of the left foot. And you can see it's a little bit straight, and when it gets straight like this, he's going to turn on the heel first and then get up on the toe. Now, again, he's had a lot of success going from the heel to the toe, so we don't worry about it too much, but we do try to get on that toe a little bit faster than he is getting onto it right here. Now, one important technical point I want to make here is we try to pick up the right foot right here. By the time the toe, knee, and shoulder are pointing out the side to 90 degrees here, we want to pick up that right foot completely off the ground. So you can see the left toe and knee and arm are just about to 90 degrees, and you can see if I were looking at frame by frame, if I did one more click right here, that right foot, that sweep leg will be right off the ground, okay? And you can see here the majority of his body weight is over the left leg, and he's keeping his shoulders level. This next frame you can see, he's on a single support now, turning out of the back. He has really nice level shoulders right there, okay? Now at this point, as he's turning out of the back, you can see his sweep leg is right behind him here. His left foot, his left toe and knee are pointing down the right sector line. This is the sector line right here. This is the edge of the shot pit, but this is the sector line. And his toe and knee are pointing just outside the sector line. At this point, he's going to start driving or running off the left leg as he sweeps the right leg around. The right leg is going to come out, around, and across his body. And by doing that, the timing is he's not going to run very hard now, because if he runs too hard and drives too hard, he'll go flying out the front of the ring. If he's throwing in a discus ring, he can drive, but he's going to drive, not quite as hard as he would if he was throwing a discus. He's going to drive with the left foot this way, and the sweep leg is going to come out and around and across the body. So the sweep leg will get him driving with the right leg down this sector line. You sum those two vectors, and you're going to go right down the middle. So you'll get this position right here as he comes into the middle of the ring. Chest is fairly straight up. Head is straight up. His head is neutral. He's not looking not pulling his head up. He's not looking to either side. He's getting a nice drive down the middle. And then he's going to touch down in the middle of the circle. When he touches down in the middle of the circle, that right toe is going to be pointing out here at about 10 o'clock. He's going to reach with his left arm down and across his body. And he's bringing in the left knee as tight as he can to the right knee and bring the left leg around. So he lands in the power position here. He has a very nice power position. From this position, he's going to square up the hips and go straight up with the legs as he rotates the right side around. Okay? You'll notice his left arm right here, it's coming around pretty high. And that's one thing we've really tried to work on. Obviously it comes around level. Wherever the left hand goes, the right side's going to follow. So he wants to get some good lift on the ball by extending straight up with the legs and hips. He needs to have that left arm coming up so the right arm can come up around after it. Yes, question?
How come some of his furthest throws go down the far left?
Down the left side?
Yeah.
He, yeah, a little bit of that is him being a little bit over-rotated. When he gets going fast and really picks up the speed, he will kind of end up over on this side of the ring, which is going to skew his throwing area over to that side. The other thing, too, though, is just the way Reece strikes the ball. He kind of pulls it up and around. And Reece, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I remember talking to Brent Noon and Randy Barnes, who Reece has basically developed his technique in their style, in their model, the Barnes-Noon model. And as Brent described the throw, when he gets in the power position, they're just working on rotating the right side and just ripping the ball around and get it screaming down the left sector line. Whereas, I came from UCLA. My coach was John Godina's coach, and it was much more of an active jump and lifting of the shot. When I talked to Brent about the throwing, he never talked about lifting the shot at all. They talked about turning and almost kind of falling in behind it and pushing it out. So that combination of things helps, I think, cause that.
That's probably the reason why I've always thrown it really flat. Because I model myself after throwers that never concentrate on getting height on the ball. They just rotate through it. So I was very good at rotating through the ball, but being 5'11", the ball would only go 6 feet off the ground and would kill my distance. So gradually I had to get out of the habit of just trying to just push through it and try to actually lift the ball with my legs and strike the ball high.
Yeah, and this is one of the things. Obviously, this is 2184, so I remember he did a good job of lifting it. This throw actually went right down the middle of the sector. It was dead center, and I would definitely say earlier in Reece's career, I mean, from 98 up till about 2005, Reece really played with that left sector a lot. Now he's gotten a little more consistent coming to a little bit left of center, which that's kind of the power alley for right-handed spinners anyway, I would say. But right here, this kind of shows you, this is actually a very nice position for him right here. I'll show you the next slide. See how he just turns the corner, he just slams that right side through. And you can look at the complete extension of the legs right here. You can look at that block leg. And he's really coming in, striking the ball well, and he's turning through with the whole right side, not just the arm, but the whole right shoulder. You can see he's keeping his elbow up very well and pushing right through the shot. One interesting thing is, I mean, Reece has always done this, but you look at his left arm right there, it's fairly straight, and obviously I've had a lot of people tell me over the years, not about Reece, but in general, like, you got to get that left arm come around, you got to pull it back in, rip back, and get a big stretch across the chest to get that extra 2 meters, and it's like, that chest stretch gives you about 1 millimeter, not 2 meters. It's fairly, you're moving so fast here, that left arm's more of an afterthought. And now in the glide, it might be a little bit more active, but in the rotation, I mean, your right side's coming around. All you're going to do is just, if anything, just shorten the lever on the left side to help set up the block. Now, Reece has always had, so of course, looking at technical models for the first couple of years working with Reece, I'm like, everything looks good, but that left arm's straight. But he kept on improving and throwing far. But I was sort of just a slave to what the textbook said, short arm. So we try to work on it a little bit. It would just mess everything up because it wasn't what he did naturally. And then I remember 99, Andy Bloom, who's a similar type of thrower in size, you know, and speed. Andy Bloom was really starting to figure things out. He was going from 20 to, and Andy started out as a glider and switched over to spinner. And Andy, he tried to glide and spin over 20 meters in the same meet. Didn't quite pull it off, but he could throw over 20 gliding, and obviously his PB is 2187 spinning. But Andy said, and Andy's also a 68.5 meter discus thrower, is when he really started to jump from 20 meters up to closer to 21 meters, when he came around, he just said he didn't even worry about the left arm. He just kind of left it out and just worked the right side, and it really allowed him to finish the throw a lot better. When he was actively trying to pull that arm in and strike the right side, the ball was going here and there, and the left arm was, I look at the left arm as, you don't want it to get in the way. And if you work the left arm, there's a 90% chance it's going to get in the way, about a 5% chance it'll help you, and a 5% chance that it'll be a wash. It won't do anything. So, like I said, I like to play the odds and just see what happens naturally. It's about picking and choosing your battles, you know. So, with this left arm, I never thought, it bothered me for a couple of years because it wasn't like the textbooks and everything that I learned younger, but then I just looked at what was happening and what was real, and it didn't really matter. The results were happening. So now Reece is, you know, winning world championships, that left arm right there. Maybe that's going to be the new model now, but the point being is you just kind of have to, like I said, pick and choose your battles. It's about figuring out what's important and not important, getting rid of what's not important, and figure out what's really, really important. Now, on the, what Reece is very good at doing, and he's really good, if you notice here, really extending out with that shoulder. He has a very good finish. I thought that C.J. Hunter had a really long and good finish off the spin. He was fairly slow through the middle of the ring, but he had great extension on it. And he's very good extending out after it. And the other thing, obviously, Reece is good at doing is coming around, reversing, and saving it. You see this position right here where he's rotating backwards. This is a position you're probably going to see in the 180-degree hurdle walk-through exercise. So you're having the kinesthetic awareness to move around and dance around by the toe board, I think, is very good to have. Again, going here right when he hits the reverse, as he comes around, he's bouncing on the left foot here. There's a vertical line going straight up for the leg through the shoulder, and his upper body, his arms are real long right here, trying to slow his rotation down so he doesn't spin too much and get out of control. And he's also keeping this left leg out in an effort to balance himself as well. That's a good skill to have. Now, this is, I want to talk about Reece's specific training. This is the stuff they did last year, or at least the stuff we had written down. Reece, you can tell me exactly how much you did of this. But anyway, this is first the fall preparation. This is usually there's not much throwing going on at this time. We don't start throwing until we get into November. So this is just to get back in condition. Reece had a bad shoulder. He had some shoulder problems in his non-throwing shoulder, so his left shoulder. But it kind of really stopped him from being able to do any type of overhead lifts, which I think are important for the shot. And also even squatting when he's just holding the bar and going down and coming up, it would hurt as well, and it kind of bothered his squatting, and that became a bit of a problem right there. So we instituted basically 2 times a week. Actually, 1 time a week right here, I guess. We did a shoulder circuit right here. So we did behind the neck military press, lat pull downs, rear delt flies, seated rows, back hyperextensions for the lower back, some standing bar twists. We added that all in on Monday, so a lot of assistance lifts there. And then he did his running drills on Monday as well. Normally, we would throw on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And whatever Reece did in college, we pretty much, if you notice, we don't train on the weekends. The weight room's not open. We don't train in college. Can't train, so Reece didn't train. So he's only really, and then Wednesday's pretty much an active rest day. So we're only training 4 days a week. 3 pretty much rest days. So really not that much. And but what we're doing here, since there's no throwing going on, he's still doing the lifts in a fashion and has them set up like he would for when he does start throwing. So normally, like I said, he'll throw Tuesday and Thursday in the late morning and then go in and lift afterwards. And I'll tell you why we have everything set up the way we have set up. Tuesday we do a combo lift. The combo lift, it's, I don't know if you've ever seen a Werner Gunther's training video. It's the combo lift is basically, if I remember correctly, it's kind of like it's with a lightweight with maybe 40K or 50K, something like that. It's a snatch to a decline overhead press, to a back squat, up to a push press, back down to the front to a front squat, back up again, a decline military, to a good morning, come back up, push press, come back down onto the floor, and that's one. And then we do that 3 times through. And then that's 1 set, and we do 3 sets of 3. So it's kind of like 9 exercises rolled into one. Jeff, you had a question?
That's just something I just smiled at. If you lift that with some of the lift specialists in the gym here,
Yeah.
they'll probably sling you out the gym. But it's all although it's conducive to shot, and I think that's brilliant. And that's a great direction for some of the shot putters here. You're actually teaching how to lift weights conducive to shot putting.
Yes.
Now, a lot of the lifting over there in the major lift center is generic to textbook.
Right.
There's a lot of things you can't do under textbook and under rules and regs.
Oh, I know.
Relating it to health and safety.
Yeah, we've had...
It's nice to see you coming out of the box.
I had this talk with Mark Proctor, you know, here about...
Oh, did he? Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. We had the talk about that, about...
Well, we're on the same wavelength.
I would, you know what, to me, if somebody cleans 360 pounds with perfect technique and a full, you know, pulls it this high, full catch and comes back up, I'd much rather see a big sideways reverse curl at 310 pounds. That person's probably going to be a better shot putter than the person with nice lifting technique. And that's the whole thing, is everything that we do, the hurdle drills that we do, we're not trying to be hurdlers, we're trying to be agile throwers. In the weight room, we're trying to do everything. It's a form of weightlifting to help us throw as opposed to weightlifting.
But do you get opposition? You know, like you're in a university. So
Nobody opposes me.
Thank you.
Nobody opposes me.
Exactly. It's a right proctor. Nobody opposes us, right?
You know what? One of our couple of young strength coaches that help with the technique, they'll complain. I'll hear rumblings about their technique's not that good and stuff, but there's something sometimes impressive about a real primitive clean pull, where you're developing that specific, you know, farm boy strength, for lack of a better term, by just ripping the crap out of the thing. That's what you need. So that combo lift, actually, you know, it's a actually I have it on video here, but another PowerPoint presentation. Go ahead, Mark.
How often did you do it then, Reece?
Honestly, I actually did the lift. You know, it helps when I have my lifting partner with me. It just pushes me, because it's a brutal lift. I'm not gonna lie.
No, it's just a case of Don saying he didn't know anything, and it's just a point. I thought you would be doing it the way your programs and everything else being, and it's just to make sure that the guys going and picking and choosing which ones you missed out on and the ones they'll miss out on.
But honestly, I mean, the way I would do it was, I mean, I may do 2 sets of it. I work my way into it, but by, you know, he'll put this in for, I don't know, 3 cycles or something, or
I don't put it in very long.
He'll put it very
Yeah.
long. But, you know, by the second cycle of doing it, I mean, I could do it no problem. I mean, I had Koji doing this when he was down here, and he could barely get through 2 sets with 135 pounds, 60K on the bar.
Yeah.
He did it twice with me, and he was like, "Okay, I'm done." I did my 3rd set, and he's like, "That's okay."
Well, he should have been lifting lighter then. So. See, Cody shouldn't have been. He came over and was experimenting with everything. He's going to get killed. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're talking about this now for Reece's age, and do you have anything for younger people and lifting?
Well, you could.
And the age, and is it how important is how much they have to lift when they're younger, under that 20, or is it what is impact, or what?
Well,
do you have any idea?
Well, all of this, like, again, obviously with age, you got to watch how much you're lifting as far as the actual number of weights. Like that combo lift, you can just do that with a stick. You know, you can do that with 10 pounds, and that's probably perfectly fine for anybody. It's just a matter of it's a tough lift when you put 50K on there and you're on your last set right there. But almost any of these exercises you can do when you're younger. I think obviously when you're introducing a young person to lifting, you want to make sure their mechanics are correct. To an extent, you establish that first and then figure out how much to push the weight. But almost any of these exercises are perfectly fine exercises.
If they say to you, they just want to every week want to increase it more, I want to lift more. Is
Well,
there any danger of that, or to be?
Oh yeah, you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
But and especially if you're a young athlete and you're on your own trying to figure that out, that's not a good situation. You need to have a mentor or a coach there watching you. Obviously, what you don't want to get caught up in is trying to lift for numbers' sake and get your numbers up, because obviously you're going to hit a point where the weight's going to outstrip your technique, and then your technique starts to fall apart, and then that's where you're going to have problems and injuries. So that's where you need to be smart. And again, you know what Reece does here. Some people may call it slacking. Some people may call it smart training. Is if he goes in, he does that combo lift, he's going to do 3 sets of 3, and he does 2 sets, and he's like, man, I'm just beat, I'm feeling kind of tired. He won't do the third one. That's called being smart, listening to your body. Whereas other people might say, oh, you're cheating yourself, you got to work hard. There's a fine line between, you know, hard work and stupidity. So, you know, you got to be smart and not try to prove yourself too much, you know. And that's hard to do. That's really, really hard to do. And I think that's one of Reece's talents, is he's been able to do that. He's very disciplined about that. And that's why you see 10 straight years of steady progress. Whereas a lot of times when progress has been halted, it's usually, you know, that the analogy would be, you see people, you know, driving down the road and there's a series of stoplights, and they speed to the first one, hit the red light, and the light turns green, they take off again, and they hit the next light, and they stop, start, stop, start. You get injuries and overuse injuries that way. Fine, slow, steady pace. You hit all the green lights. You never slow down. You get better gas mileage, less wear and tear on your car. That's what you want to do with your training, is slowly move forward and not have all those dings and bangs, you know, and injuries, so you can keep on throwing well, because it's all about the throwing. Sure, go ahead.
Looking at the programs and looking at what we do out in Georgia, the big thing I've noticed is the athleticism, regardless of Reece's process. After 10 years, he's still doing an awful lot of athletic work.
Yes.
Being an athlete rather than trying to be a gym rat.
Yeah. Well, like I said, there's a law of diminishing returns, like I said, with the weight room. With the athleticism, if anything, you know, when you get older, I mean, you're going to get more easily injured, tighter, and those type of things. So we got to keep up with the athletic movements there. Then as you get older, I don't think you have to work quite as hard in the weight room to maintain your strength levels too. So that's the beauty of it. So you know, that's why we keep with the athletic stuff to maintain that, and the lifting gets a little bit more to the point every single year. One more question.
In terms of strength training, how would this be different for a glider?
You know what? With the glider, I'd have more overhead lifts in there, like push press and things like that. Maybe a little bit. There might be a little bit more emphasis, I would say, with some of the rotational assistance work. Maybe, although it's good for anybody, maybe a little bit less of that stuff, and a little bit more combined movements, like, you know, a clean and jerk, and like I said, a little bit more overhead lifting. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do, I would say maybe the glider too, a little bit more dependent on strength, so you might have a little bit more volume in the weight room as well. But other than that, not that much more different. Yeah, you know, with the push press, you know, like for example, Reece push pressed 180 for 2. Never went for a single, so I mean, he's lifting close to 400 pounds for a double.
And that's off stands, off machine, or?
That's pulling it off the rack.
Okay.
Yeah, that's off the rack, so that's on the Smith machine. And you know, Brad Snyder, he could. Geez, what was Brad's best? He's probably 200 kilograms. Brad, the Canadian, he's 200 kilograms. You know, push press. The one thing with that push press over the head, you know, it's a bit risky. So, like I said, you get a benefit out of it, but then again, you want to push the envelope enough, but not too much where you end up, like I said, the more times you put 200K over your head and lock out, and you got to bring it back down somehow, or just.
The importance of the exercise.
I think it's pretty important, but you got to weigh the risks and benefits. If you do it too much, you might get yourself injured or might get some tweaks in the shoulder. I was a javelin thrower, but I did a lot of overhead presses. I was for my body weight, that's pretty strong, and my shoulders now they're clicking and popping from a lot of heavy overhead stuff. So obviously you want to get the full benefit out of the exercise, but you don't want to do it so much that it ends up causing chronic injuries. But yeah, there's definitely a place for that, in the program. Obviously with the strength and conditioning field, there's a lot of stuff. High level throwing, it's risky business. I mean, shot put, javelin throwing, you're going to have to do high risk stuff, and for a general strength coach that's kind of keeping track of the weight room, that's going to be kind of scary. But you're not going to get the breakthroughs you're going to make at the highest level. You kind of have to push the envelope to get those breakthroughs. So you are going to have to do risky stuff. Even that skin the cat that we're seeing on the rings there, I think a lot of people, oh, that's too crazy. Don't do that. I mean, how conservative are you going to be? You have to. That's where you have to kind of use your own. See what you have to work with and see what the issues are and see how far, to push it. And like I said, I think, at this point, like with Reece, the heavy overhead stuff, I think if he takes out of his program and doesn't do it this year, I don't think at this point in his career it's going to hold him back at all. It'll just be another possible source of injury that we don't have to deal with. So it's a good thing at this point. But like I said, you have to look at each individual situation. I could see that this talk, we could probably go another 2 hours here. Let me get through some of the stuff so I can get to the season and the competitions. But really quickly, Tuesday, combo lift, snatch grip deadlift on a small box. That's a lower back exercise. And basically, when I say small box, I'm talking about a box about the size of these steps here. We're going snatch grip wide and up on the box. So when he drops down, he has to go down really, really low before the weight can even hit the floor. So he gets a really big range of motion. If you were just on the ground doing a traditional deadlift, you're only going to go down to here before the plate hits the ground. On the box, the snatch grip, you can go way down to here and then come all the way up and get a much bigger range of motion. So obviously we're going with a little bit lighter weight, but you can see here it says, 4x7 on a small box with good range of motion, bench press and then bent over rows. Bent over rows is kind of the opposing movement to a bench press. And then we do some build-ups afterwards. Wednesday is just a rest day. Thursday, light behind the neck push press because Reece is coming off those shoulder problems. So we're just going very light, working the range of motion there. Rhythmic step-ups. This is a rhythmic step-up. Instead of a traditional step-up like this, a rhythmic step-up is like this. You drive up with the right leg, then do a negative down with the left leg, and then switch it up, going up with the left and then down with the right. So when it says 2x8 each leg, that means 8 like this, driving up with the right. We'll do 8, and then we'll switch and go 8 with the left leg. Okay? And the one thing now where the strength coaches have imposed their will is with those step-ups now, we're not allowed to do them with the bar across the back. We got to use dumbbells in the hands or weighted vests because of injuries and lawsuits. So I'm not sure if there's many lawyers over here as there are in the U.S., but we got lawsuits flying all over the place. Overhead shot throws, which I don't think we do very much. Reece's favorite 3x150 meters in 25 seconds, which he has no problem doing. And then Friday, back squat, incline press, ball throws for height, which you saw in the video, hammer releases with the medicine ball. And Reece is a 60-meter hammer thrower, if you didn't know. And then running drills, same as Monday. Okay, then I'll kind of show you what we do indoors. And this was his program for indoors. He went to Nordhaus in Germany for his first meet last year. And Reece told me, I remember he came back, I said, Reece, how'd you do? He said, I did okay. And I said, did we win? He's like, yeah, I won. I threw 21-31. I'm like, yeah, that's good. That equals your best opener ever, and you did it over in Germany. He goes, yeah, I warmed up at 22 meters, though, so I could have done better in the meet. And so right there, that told me if he could make the ball go 22 meters, we pretty much have what we need for the year. We just need to make it happen all the time. So that kind of decided, those little things that kind of come out and tell you that tells you you don't need to try to work hard to find the magic answer. It's already there. We just got to solidify it and make it happen on a regular basis. But you can see January 19th, went over to Germany, 21-31, comes back about a week later, throws in Boston that next weekend, 21-29. Then the next Friday, He does Milrose Games, which is one of his favorite meets, and his track club sponsors the games. They're based there in New York, so that's a big meet for him. 2175, which is his best indoor meet of the year. Then he went actually over to Ostrava right after that and did some promotional stuff over there with the Davis Cup and all that. And then he went on to Valencia, where the World Indoor Championships are this year, 2132. Came over here to Birmingham, 2112, and then flew right back home a week later through the U.S. Indoor Championships. I think got second place this 2121, and which he knew by doing 1, 2, 3 meets overseas, he was going to be pretty compromised for this meet. And so that wasn't the end of the world. It wasn't like there was, you know, a world championship team to make, even though we would take the top 2. But the training plan during the preparation period leading up to those first couple meets, you can see we were, with the power lifts, we were doing 6s and 5s back in December and in the fall. Now we're doing 5s and 4s and finishing up at 3s. Monday, bench press and rhythmic step-ups together, and then we got military press, lat pulls, rear delt flies, dynamic bar twists. You know, the dynamic bar twist, he's going to be holding a bar, probably a 15-kilogram bar, like this. There's no broom in here or anything. He's going to take it, put it behind him, and throw it up over his head and back down here like this. It's kind of a javelin exercise or a hammer exercise, but a good trunk exercise nonetheless. And then a stair circuit. And what the stair circuit is 6 sprints to the top and 3 double-legged jumps to the top of our stairs that we have at the track, which is a set of about 24 stairs. Each stair is about this high, about 1 stride length. Tuesday, we'll go in and throw, and then we'll lift afterwards. Now you'll notice what we try to do with the lifting is we set it up so the lifting does not get in the way of the throwing. Okay, so we want to be fully recovered as much as possible for the throwing. So the throwing sessions are critical. We're only throwing twice a week, probably including stand throws. We're probably taking on average around 20 throws a workout. That's 40 throws a week, and that's all. But the throws are very high quality, and that's the whole thing there is, as long as the quality is high and it carries over to high quality in the meet, why take 250 throws when all you need is 40 to get these results in the meet? Because if you do 40 instead of 250 in a week, like Ulf Timmerman used to do, that's 210 less throws to jack your wrist up. That's the way we look at it. So we want to get to the point, pare it down, get to the point as much as possible. And that's kind of how it's worked out. Now, obviously, if we have a competition on the weekends, and that's 3 throwing sessions a week. But Tuesday, we have jump squats, push press, hip raises on the box, which is a hamstring exercise, and then lateral arm raises, and then back hyperextensions, add some weight on the back, you know, the weight vest or plates if needed, and then some build-ups, 6 by 100 meters after lifting. So the jump squats, in what the exercise that seems to affect Reece the most negatively in his throwing, that beats him up the most, is squats. So we either take the squats and we put them on Friday if there's no competitions, a lot of times. So he will do squats on Friday and he doesn't throw again until the following Tuesday. That's 96 hours to recover from the squats. Or in this case, when we're getting ready for the season here, we put him on Tuesday, so he has 48 hours to recover for that throwing session on Thursday. Wednesdays, just some overheads and underhands and just resting basically. Thursday, incline bench press, slow rhythmic step-ups on a higher box. Okay, so bigger range of motion. Walking twists and some standing bar twists. And then Friday, if there's no meet, then we'll do some agility circuit. And I put a little note here, recorded a 28-inch vertical leap, recorded on the 12th of January last year. Then when we went to the end of the indoor season last year, you can see, then we just kind of went day by day because there's so much travel in between here. So if you look here, when he's traveling a lot, we pretty much get rid of all the assistance lifts, and we're working just on the core lifts. So when we're talking about core lifts, we're talking about bench press, step-ups, and back squats. And every once in a while, we'll add in a little bit of twisting work here and there, but not much. And you can kind of look at the numbers. You know, we'll go up a little bit heavy in the squats, but not that much. Okay, and again, we'll have, you know, copies of this later on. Now, outdoor, we transition to outdoor, and what we, used to have a problem figuring out is the indoors the last 3 or 4 years went really well for Reece. Then we go to the outdoor season and go, man, what do we do now? So we'd break everything down, slow it up, and try to build back up again. And we just have trouble building it back up and finding that great rhythm we had indoors. So I think we figured, 2 years ago? It was like, let's just get after it right away and just kind of keep it going and forget about trying to break things down again and work on the back of the ring. Let's just just hold on to the rhythm that we had indoors. So we kind of made that choice the last couple of years, and it's worked quite successfully. I don't know if that's going to work for everybody, but that's kind of what we figured out through trial and error. But Reece had the Alabama Relays, which is the for fun meet. You got to eat 2.5 full slabs of ribs. And then a month later, he had the meet in Senegal, the Grand Prix meet there. And that was a whole month later. This is the preparation cycle, basically kind of in between the Alabama Relays and the Senegal meet. I probably got about 3 minutes here. Monday, you can see Monday, we just do some stair sprints, that's it. Then we throw in the morning. Then right after we throw, bench press, step ups, dumbbell military, front arm raises, manhandlers, and then an agility circuit. Manhandlers are where you take the Olympic bar and you stick it in the corner. You can put some plates on there and you're twisting with it side to side, so it's another trunk exercise. Then Wednesday, not very much. Throw on Thursday. Then after we throw, incline dumbbell press, front squats to push press, dumbbell flies, walking twists, seated plate twists, and some sprints, and a little bit of standing long jump. And then on Friday, since this is kind of preparation for a meet, that's where we put in the back squats and the hip raises. A Vertimax is basically a jumping machine where you put a belt on, tie some resistance cords, and you just do multiple jumps over and over again against resistance. That's what the Vertimax is. Standing bar twists, rear delt flies, and back hyperextension. So some core work and a little bit of shoulder and bodybuilding work in there. So you can see here, Monday, not a whole lot, just a few sprints. Nothing on Wednesday, nothing on Saturday and Sunday. Pretty much 3 good work days in there for the most part, and that's it. Lots of recovery built in. Does it get results for Reece? Yes, it does. Why? Lots of recovery. Okay. Then spring, we had, and this is an interesting situation. This is kind of what we face over here in the States as Reece. Remember, April 28th, he goes over to Senegal and Africa and competes, comes back. About a little less than 2 weeks later, he goes all the way over to the Middle East and competes, then comes back. And then over here in the United States, if you look at our meets, we're over in Atlanta, near Atlanta. We go to LA for the next meet 9 days later after coming back from the Middle East. You know, that's a 4.5-hour flight to LA for domestic competitions. You fly 4.5 hours from here, you're like in Tel Aviv or something like that. You know, that's a long way to go, and we had talked about doing this meet or not to do this meet. And I remember I told he goes, well, what do you think? Should I do Carson or not? And I said, look, you may not, you're probably going to be a little bit tired at Carson. I said, as long as you can handle going there, and if you don't win because you're a little bit tired from the Doha trip, as long as you can handle that mentally and be okay with that, fine to do the meet. I said, it's not going to have a bearing on your world ranking or your national ranking as long as you win USAs and win the Worlds, which is the plan anyway. So Reece's like, okay, that's cool. So he goes and does the meet, and he throws 21:36, tired, and he gets third. Adam Nelson edges him out, and Christian wins the meet. Reece comes back and didn't say much that first practice, but I could tell he's just kind of agitated. And they said, you know, Coach, that after practice, because we usually practice, I don't really say much, then we talk about it afterward. I remember, like, I was talking with Koji about it, and he's like, you know, the practice is like the story. Let the story unfold, and then we talk about the story afterward. We don't interrupt the story with a whole bunch of talking. And so we're talking about it afterwards, and Reece is like, I could just tell he didn't like getting third place there. Like Reece said, let me just remind you, we talked about this in December. You said that you were going to be able to handle whatever result you got in there. And he threw over 70 feet. That's an excellent result, 21:36. But he was still mad about it. So, but that's the competitor in him. But I had to remind him that this is exactly what we thought was going to happen. He probably wasn't going to throw 22 meters in that meet because he just got back from the Middle East. And he knows how he feels after he gets back from the Middle East. It's like 2 weeks of recovery after a long trip like that. So then had basically another 3 weeks. Went to Eugene, which again, that's like a 5-hour trip. That's a 5-hour flight to Portland, then it's another 45-minute flight down to Eugene, so that's really far away. Throws 21:65. Yes.
Between the Carson and Eugene meet, I was actually supposed to do another meet. And after I went to Carson and finished third in that meet, I ended up canceling everything and then doing a training camp just to get prepared for Eugene. Because Eugene, ultimately, during the year, we picked Eugene as one of the meets we want to do well in terms of you're rated so far. And I had a foul at like 22:30 or something. So, I mean, I was going well. Just a preference.
Yeah. I forgot. Reece, that's why you're here.
Yeah.
I can't remember everything. So yeah, but that's exactly right. Reece went into Eugene in good shape. We're pretty happy with the shape he was in. And Eugene, you know, it's a Nike meet. It's right in the headquarters. He's with Nike. It's a mandatory meet for him and his contract, plus all the top U.S. guys are there. So it's a meet that we want to do well in, much more so than even Carson. And obviously it's 2 weeks before USA, so you want to have good momentum going into USA's, which is arguably the toughest meet of the year anyway. And Reece actually went into USA's in excellent shape, well over 22-meter shape, I thought. We go there, it's pouring rain, and 5 of Reece, actually I think every single throw that Reece had, except for one, would have won the meet. So he went in there and just crushed people there, and he threw 21.47. And then, I'll show you what happened after that, but this is the last little thing here. This is what we do in season when we're traveling lots. This is pretty much, once we get to about middle of May, all the way through the summer, what we do is we try to set it up so Reece has a meet every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. If he has a meet every 3 weeks, what we do is the first week, he'll do the power lifts 5x5 at 75 to 80%. Then he'll go heavy 5x8 up to 85%. Then 5x3 up to 75% again. So lighter the third week. And this is what we're doing now. Now look at it. Now we're just doing back squats and hip raises on Friday. That's all. Step ups and back hypers, walking twists on Thursday. That's all. Bench press and a couple assistance lifts, and that's it. We've really got it pared down quite a bit because we need a lot of recovery. Why do you need a lot of recovery? Because he's traveling over to Europe and then coming back and forth. Needs the recovery from these long flights. Sitting in the plane now. Now he's platinum medallion, so maybe he'll get upgraded now to first class all the time. We'll see. But he had to pay his dues to do that. If we have 2 weeks in between each meet, then we basically throw week 1 out, and week 1 becomes week 2. So the first, when we come back from a meet in Europe, let's say he'll go heavy the first week and then light the second week and then head out to the next meet. Very simple formula. We figured it out over a number of years, and it's worked out pretty well. So it's basically, you know, light week, heavy week, light week. We always have a light week immediately before a competition on that particular weekend or whenever it is. And then finishing out this year, right after USA's, I think the final was on a Saturday. He jumped on a plane on Sunday, went to Ostrava, got there on Monday, and the meet was on Tuesday. And he threw 21.77 and took McCour's meet record out, which is nice. And that was on June 27th, and then he did the meet in Cork to kind of help pay the bills a little bit on the way back. 3 days later, threw 21.47, set an Irish all-comers record. Came back, and we had 3 weeks to train going to Madrid. And we're hoping to do really well at Madrid through 2081, which obviously got second place. Wasn't really happy about that. I think, again, Reece, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we were working on some timing and technique, and I was kind of telling Reece one thing, and he was thinking another thing about his timing. And then when he went to Madrid, he was like, man, I couldn't get over the left and get out of the back at all. Whatever we were working on, whatever you're telling me, I didn't quite believe it because it felt too good, but I think you were exactly right. I need to get out over the left better, and we made that adjustment right after Madrid, but it took that 2081, it was kind of like a slap in the face to say, hey, this is the direction you need to go. And so then the next meet, I thought Reece is in pretty good shape going over into London. He threw 22.43, and then he just pretty much stayed in good shape all the way through to Osaka through 22.04. We did a little practice meet just to get on the ring in Osaka in the state, and that's the 22.12. You know, he won the meet real easily. That wasn't the point. That was just to kind of get on the ring. Go ahead.
Did you go to Russia after London?
No.
That was Christian and Dan.
Oh. Yeah. They went over to, I think, Estonia or wherever it was. That was that. Obviously qualified. That was just one throw right there. And then after Worlds, pretty much the season could have ended right there. But you know, Reece was in the Grand Prix final, was planning on doing the Grand Prix final, and then Warsaw and the meet in Slovakia. And Dmitsa, you know, came up with some pretty good money. We're just begging him to come, so we decided to go a week early and do that. And he ended up winning all 3 meets. It was about 85 degrees in Georgia, and you get over to Slovakia, it's like 45 degrees and rainy, so it was a bit of a shock. And so, you know, it was tough to really throw all that well, but he managed to win all 3. And I think that's a good sign that when your technique holds together, you can pull out the win, because that's the bottom line is adverse conditions, you still pull out the win. And at 2064, he just held off Majewski by about 11 centimeters there, and he beat Adam by 3 centimeters on his last throw at the World Athletics Final, so he finished up pretty strong. But anyway, I know I had to breeze over the end here. Again, if you have any other questions during the break, please feel free to ask. Obviously, I've kind of told the story on my end. Obviously, Reece probably has a few addendums there and all that. But anyway, that's about it. Thank you again for listening. And like I said, please see me anytime next couple days with any questions you may have.
I'll be back.